The moment the police handcuffed me in front of half my town, I realized someone hadn't just stolen my reputation, they had carefully designed its funeral. People still tell that story, but almost nobody knows what really happened. My name is Ethan, and until that day, I believed that if you worked hard, treated people fairly, and stayed honest, your reputation would protect you. I couldn't have been more wrong. I lived in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business before breakfast. I wasn't rich or important. I managed the local hardware store, coached a youth baseball team on weekends, and volunteered during community cleanup events. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was a good one. Customers trusted me. Neighbors waved when I drove by. Parents let their kids work summer jobs at the store because they knew I'd look after them. That trust took years to build. It disappeared in less than 24 hours. It started with a missing donation box. Every spring, local businesses collected money for emergency food assistance. Our store always participated, and customers were incredibly generous. By the end of the month, the clear acrylic donation box sitting near the register was almost full. The plan was simple. On Friday morning, I would count the money with another employee, seal it in a deposit bag, and deliver everything to the community center. But when I unlocked the store that morning, the donation box was gone. At first, I thought someone had moved it. I checked the office, the break room, the storage shelves. Nothing. Then my assistant manager, Kyle, walked in. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he laughed. "The donation box is missing." His smile disappeared almost instantly. "That's not funny. I'm serious." Within minutes, everyone working that morning was searching. No box, no money, no explanation. Kyle suggested checking the security cameras. That seemed obvious until we opened the recordings. The camera covering the front counter had conveniently stopped working around closing time the previous evening. The screen froze at exactly 6:42 p.m. No footage after that. Kyle sighed. Guess maintenance never fixed it. Something about the way he said it bothered me. Too casual, too prepared. Still, I ignored the feeling. The owner contacted the police. An officer arrived, asked routine questions, and took statements from everyone who'd worked the previous evening. I answered everything honestly. When he asked who had access to the office keys, the list was short. The owner, Kyle, and me. I didn't think much of it. Until Saturday morning. I woke to non-stop phone notifications. Friends, customers, former classmates, even people I barely knew. Every message sounded the same. "Tell me this isn't true. What happened? I hope they got the wrong person." Confused, I opened social media. Someone had posted a blurry screenshot from inside our store. The caption read, "Hardware store manager caught stealing charity money meant for struggling families." Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments. People I'd never met were calling me a thief. Others said they'd always thought I looked suspicious. Some claimed I'd been stealing for years. It was amazing how quickly complete strangers became eyewitnesses. I hadn't even been charged with anything. By noon, reporters were standing outside the store. The owner called. "Ethan, don't come in today." "What?" "People are angry." "You think I stole it?" A long silence. I don't know what to think. That hurt more than I expected. 3 years of loyalty, reduced to one sentence. My phone rang again. This time it was Coach Ramirez from the Youth Baseball League. "We're going to need you to step away until this gets sorted out." "I've done nothing." "I hope that's true." Hope. Not belief. Hope. I sat in my living room staring at the blank television while my entire life collapsed without me leaving the couch. Then came the knock. 2 detectives. Professional. Calm. They asked if I'd answer a few more questions downtown. I agreed immediately. I figured innocent people had nothing to fear. Another mistake. At the station, they showed me something that made my stomach drop. A bank deposit bag. Inside was paperwork with my initials written across the seal. "We found this behind a dumpster," one detective said. Okay. It tested positive for your fingerprints. Of course it did. They exchanged a look. I handle every deposit. Exactly. I tried explaining that touching the bag was normal. It proved nothing. They listened politely, but their expressions never changed. Then came the question I wasn't prepared for. Can anyone verify where you were after leaving work Thursday night? I froze. I lived alone. I'd picked up takeout, watched a movie, gone to bed. No witnesses, no receipts, nothing. For the first time, I realized how dangerous ordinary routines could become when someone wanted to frame you. When I got home, someone had spray-painted one word across my garage door: thief. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Lawson, was standing across the street. For years, she'd baked cookies for every holiday. Now she avoided looking at me. I spent the next 2 days trying to defend myself. No one wanted explanations. People preferred certainty. Customers demanded I be fired. Parents signed petitions banning me from youth activities. Local Facebook groups treated rumors like proven facts. Even businesses I'd supported for years quietly unfriended me online. The strangest part wasn't the hatred, it was how organized it felt. Every few hours, another anonymous post appeared, another accusation, another inside source. Someone wasn't just spreading gossip, someone was feeding it. Then the owner called again. His voice sounded defeated. "I'm letting you go. You don't even know if I did it. I have to think about the business." "So that's it?" "I'm sorry." The call ended. Just like that. No job, no reputation, no income. Everything I'd built had vanished because people found a story more believable than the truth. 3 days later, the police returned. This time they weren't asking questions. They were carrying handcuffs. As they led me across my front lawn, I looked up and saw nearly every neighbor watching from their porches. Some recorded with their phones, others smiled. And standing near the end of the street was Kyle. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't recording. He was simply watching. Calm. Far calmer than someone should have been. That's when I stopped wondering whether someone had framed me. I knew they had. I just had no idea how deep the lie really went. The detectives put me in a holding cell for 6 hours before finally releasing me on bail. Those 6 hours changed something inside me. I walked in believing the truth would save me. I walked out knowing the truth meant nothing unless I could prove it. By the time I got home, another rumor was already spreading online. Apparently, I had confessed. I hadn't, but nobody bothered asking. Someone was feeding lies to the town faster than I could deny them. For the first time in my life, I turned my phone off. The silence lasted less than an hour. A knock came at my door. When I opened it, I found Mrs. Lawson standing there, the same neighbor who had looked away while I was being arrested. She looked nervous. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. I didn't answer. I saw something that day, and I was too afraid to say anything. That got my attention. She handed me a small envelope. "I've been feeding a stray cat for months. I installed a motion camera facing my backyard because raccoons kept getting into the food." I frowned. "My backyard connects to the alley behind your garage." My heart started racing. "I didn't think the footage mattered until I saw everyone accusing you." Inside the envelope was a USB drive. I made a copy. After she left, I plugged it into my laptop. The camera quality wasn't great, no sound, just grainy black and white video. At 11:48 p.m., someone walked through the alley carrying a large rectangular object. It looked exactly the size of the charity donation box. The person's face wasn't visible. A hoodie covered their head. But something stood out. They limped, not dramatically, just a slight hitch in their right leg. I had seen that walk before. Kyle. 3 months earlier, he'd twisted his knee during our company softball game. Ever since then, he'd had that same uneven stride. It wasn't proof, but it was the first crack in the story. I considered taking the footage straight to the police, but after being arrested on circumstantial evidence, I knew a grainy video of someone in a hoodie wouldn't be enough. If I was going to accuse Kyle, I needed more than a suspicion. The next morning, I visited the hardware store, not through the front. From across the street, I watched employees come and go. Kyle looked relaxed, too relaxed. He laughed with customers, shook hands with reporters, even gave a short interview about how heartbreaking it was that someone could steal from struggling families. I almost walked over. Instead, I stopped myself. If Kyle was behind this, confronting him now would accomplish nothing. I needed evidence. Real evidence. Then I remembered something. The security camera over the front register had frozen at exactly 6:42 p.m. That seemed oddly specific. Cameras rarely fail at the perfect moment, unless someone makes them. I called the security company that serviced our store. The technician couldn't discuss customer accounts, but after I explained I was the employee being accused, he hesitated. Then he said something unexpected. "I probably shouldn't tell you this." My pulse quickened. "What?" "We received a service request the day before the theft." "For what?" "Someone reported that camera 3 was glitching." Camera 3? The one covering the donation box. Who submitted the request? "I'm sorry, I can't say. But here's the strange part." I waited. No technician was ever sent. So someone canceled the appointment less than an hour later. I thanked him and hung up. Why report a broken camera, then cancel the repair the day before the money disappeared? That couldn't be coincidence. I needed access to the store records. Only one person still trusted me enough to help. Maya. She had worked the evening shifts with me for nearly 2 years. When I called, she answered immediately. "I don't believe you stole anything," she said before I could speak. Hearing someone actually believe me almost made me cry. I told her everything. The alley footage, the canceled repair, Kyle. She went quiet. Then she whispered, "There's something else." "What?" "The night before everything happened, Kyle stayed late after everyone left." "Why?" "He said he had inventory paperwork." "And?" "I forgot my phone charger, so I came back." My heart pounded. "What did you see?" "He was in the manager's office." "So?" "He was using your computer." I froze. "My password?" "I figured you'd given it to him." "I never did." Maya sounded uneasy. "I didn't think much about it until now." That single sentence explains something I'd been unable to understand. The deposit paperwork, the initials, the timing. Someone had access to everything connected to my job, including my computer. The question was, how? Then I remembered. Months earlier, Kyle had repeatedly helped me close the store. More than once, he'd been standing beside me while I logged in. At the time, I never thought anything of it. I never imagined he'd memorized my password. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every piece fit together. Except one. Where was the money? Kyle wouldn't risk all of this unless the cash had gone somewhere safe. The answer arrived unexpectedly the following afternoon. Maya called again. "Ethan, you need to hear this." "What happened?" "Kyle just bought a brand new pickup truck." I frowned. "He said his uncle loaned him the money." "Does he even have an uncle?" "I've worked with him 4 years." She paused. "I've never heard him mention one." Something wasn't right. Kyle had complained for months that he couldn't afford rent. Now, just days after thousands of dollars vanished, he was driving a truck worth more than his yearly salary. I decided to follow him. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a movie, but I had no other choice. For 3 evenings, I kept my distance. Home, store, gas station. Nothing unusual. On the 4th night, everything changed. Instead of driving home, Kyle headed toward the abandoned grain warehouse outside town. The place had been empty for years. No businesses, no houses, no reason to be there. I parked 100 yards away and watched. Another vehicle pulled in, a dark SUV. Kyle stepped out carrying a black duffel bag. He handed it to a man I didn't recognize. The man opened it just enough to peek inside. Even from where I stood, I could see stacks of cash. My hands started shaking. Before I could grab my phone, headlights flashed behind me. A truck roared into the lot. Someone had spotted my car. Kyle turned. His eyes locked onto mine across the darkness. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then he smiled. Not the nervous smile I'd seen during my arrest. This one was different, confident, like he'd been expecting me. The stranger slammed the duffel bag shut. Both men jumped into the SUV. Instead of driving away, they accelerated straight toward my car. And in that terrifying moment, I realized this had never been about a stolen donation box. I had stumbled into something far bigger than I was ever supposed to see. Later, I learned why Kyle hadn't seemed worried when he spotted me that night. By then, the entire town already believed I was guilty. The police had arrested me. My name was all over social media. Even if I told people what I'd seen, Kyle assumed nobody would believe a man they already thought was a thief. In his mind, I wasn't a threat. I was the perfect scapegoat. The SUV came at me so fast, I barely had time to react. I slammed my car into reverse, my tires throwing gravel everywhere as I backed away. The SUV missed my front bumper by inches before swerving around and speeding toward the highway. I wanted to chase them. Instead, I did the smartest thing I'd done since this nightmare began. I pulled out my phone and recorded the SUV's license plate before it disappeared into the darkness. For the first time since my arrest, I had something real. The next morning, I drove straight to the detectives. They weren't exactly happy to see me. One detective folded his arms. "If you're here to tell us you're innocent again, we've heard it." "I know," I replied, placing the USB drive and my phone on the desk. "That's why I brought evidence instead." Over the next 20 minutes, they watched everything. The alley footage, the vehicle registration, the photo of the SUV, the timeline showing the canceled camera repair, the statement Maya agreed to sign about Kyle using my office computer after hours. Their expressions slowly changed. One detective leaned back in his chair. "This isn't enough to clear you." "I know." The detective studied the evidence for another moment. "It's still circumstantial, but enough to investigate Kyle." That afternoon, officers searched Kyle's house. They didn't find the missing donation money. They found something much worse. Hidden inside a locked toolbox were dozens of prepaid debit cards, fake ID badges from local charities, blank deposit slips, and notebooks listing businesses across 3 neighboring towns. Every page followed the same pattern: donation drives, security camera locations, employee schedules, weak points. Kyle hadn't stolen one charity box. He'd been organizing thefts for nearly 2 years. The detectives immediately obtained a warrant for the warehouse. Inside, they discovered several storage lockers filled with unopened donation boxes from schools, churches, youth sports leagues, and nonprofit fundraisers. Some still had handwritten notes from children taped to the sides. "Thank you for helping families." Seeing those messages nearly broke me. People had donated because they wanted to help neighbors in need. Kyle had turned kindness into a business. The man in the SUV was arrested 2 days later. He wasn't a relative. He was part of a small criminal crew that traveled between rural towns, targeting community fundraisers because security was usually minimal and public trust was high. Kyle had been their inside man. My arrest wasn't an accident, it was part of the plan. As the trusted manager, I was the perfect suspect. If everyone blamed me, no one would look at him. The detectives called me back to the station. This time, they weren't carrying handcuffs. The lead investigator looked me in the eye. "We owe you an apology." I didn't answer right away. Part of me appreciated the words. Another part remembered sitting alone in that holding cell while the whole town celebrated my downfall. Charges against me were dropped that same afternoon. Local news stations rushed to update the story. Funny how quietly people correct a lie after shouting it for days. The headline changed from "Manager accused of charity theft" to "Employee cleared as theft ring exposed." The words were better. The damage wasn't. Some people immediately apologized. Others pretended they had never doubted me. A few simply stopped making eye contact whenever they saw me. The hardest conversation came from the hardware store owner. He asked me to meet him before opening. When I walked into his office, he stood up. "I failed you." I stayed silent. I fired the one person who'd earned my trust and believed the one who hadn't. He slid a set of store keys across the desk. "If you'll come back, your job is waiting." I looked at the keys for a long moment. 6 months earlier, I would have accepted without hesitation. Now, they felt heavier than they should. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I can't come back." He nodded slowly. "I understand." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was making a decision instead of simply surviving one. A month later, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Lawson organized a community meeting, not to celebrate me, to confront what had happened. More than 100 people showed up. Neighbors admitted they had believed anonymous social media posts without asking a single question. Parents apologized for removing me from coaching. Even Coach Ramirez stood up. "I told the kids that character matters," he said. "Then I judged yours before the facts were known." No speech could erase what happened, but hearing people take responsibility mattered more than I expected. That evening, the youth baseball players surprised me with a jersey signed by every kid on the team. Across the front, instead of my name, they had written one word: "Believe." I still have it. It's framed on my office wall, not because it reminds me of what I lost, because it reminds me of what I almost let other people take forever. Today, I work with nonprofit organizations, helping them improve security for community fundraisers, so what happened to us doesn't happen somewhere else. Ironically, the worst experience of my life led me to work that actually saves charities from people like Kyle. Justice didn't erase the scars, but it gave those scars a purpose. Looking back, I learned that a reputation can take decades to build and only minutes to destroy. Rumors spread because they're exciting. The truth moves slower because it has to be proven. If you're ever accused of something you didn't do, don't waste your energy arguing with every rumor. Collect facts, stay patient, let evidence speak louder than anger. And if you hear accusations about someone else, remember how easy it is for lies to sound convincing when everyone repeats them. The people who stood by me without proof changed my life. The people who judged me without proof changed theirs. If you were in my position, what would you have done the moment you realized someone had framed you? Would you have confronted Kyle immediately, or would you have quietly gathered evidence the way I did? I'd really like to hear your thoughts, so share your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy realistic stories about betrayal, justice, revenge, and redemption that keep you guessing until the very end, consider subscribing and joining us for the next story. You never know which ordinary life will be turned upside down next.